On January 1st, 2024, in Addis Ababa, something happened that barely made sense to most people watching the news. Ethiopia's Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed, quietly signed a memorandum of understanding with President of Somaliland, Ms. Bihi Abdi. The headlines told us it was about port access, about sovereignty, about territorial disputes. The African Union condemned it. Somalia recalled its ambassador. Diplomats argued on television, but that wasn't the real story. The real story was hidden deep inside the agreement, far away from the headlines, buried in legal language most people will never read. One sentence, it said, Ethiopia will get priority access to export its agricultural products through Berbera Port with cheaper fees, faster handling, and special cold storage facilities. In simple terms, Ethiopia found a faster, cheaper route to the global market. And that matters because Ethiopia exports over $1.4 billion worth of coffee and flowers every single year. For the past 30 years, those exports have passed through routes controlled by powerful American commodity traders, European auction houses, and global logistic giants. This agreement wasn't about soldiers or borders. It was about who controls the road your coffee travels on before it reaches your cup. And once you understand that, everything else suddenly makes sense. This is Project Rise Africa, from the fields of Ethiopia to the markets of the world. Subscribe and be part of Africa, building power on its own terms. Within 6 months of the deal, Ethiopia begins redirecting exports through Berbera. By September 2024, 18% of Ethiopian coffee previously shipped through Djibouti to European and American buyers is moving through Somaliland to new buyers in Gulf states, China, and Southeast Asia. The Amsterdam flower auction, which has set global rose prices since 1911, sees Ethiopian supply drop by 12%. Dubai's flower market sees it surge. Coffee futures traders in New York scramble to track shipments that no longer appear in their usual data streams. This wasn't a port dip. It was a supply chain revolution disguised as a territorial dispute. And it's going to cost the United States and Europe billions in market control. They didn't realize they were already losing 1 container of coffee beans at a time. So let's reconstruct who really controls what. Ethiopia is the largest coffee producer in Africa, 5th globally. Coffee represents 30% of Ethiopia's total exports. They make $900 million annually. Flowers add another $500 million, making Ethiopia the 2nd largest cut flower exporter to Europe after Kenya. But here is the constraint. 95% of these exports travel through a single route. It moves from Djibouti port to shipping lines controlled by NASEC, MSCs, CMA, and CGN, to European auctions in Amsterdam and Hamburg, then to US commodity markets in New York. Every step controlled by intermediaries taking their cut. Every price set by auction houses Ethiopian farmers never see. Every logistics delay costing millions in spoiled roses and downgraded coffee grades. Ethiopia's farmers produce specialty grade coffee that retails for $25 per pound in Brooklyn. They receive $1.50 per pound. The other $23.50 is captured by exporters, shippers, roasters, and retailers, most headquartered in Europe and America. For a whole 30 years, Ethiopian officials have complained about this. They've called it value capture. They've proposed processing facilities, direct-to-consumer models, and regional trade routes. The West nodded politely and did nothing because the system worked perfectly for everyone except Ethiopia. The Berbera deal didn't begin on January 1st, 2024. It became inevitable on March 13th, 2021, the day Ethiopia's government held an emergency meeting on agricultural export losses. That month, the Tigray War was raging. Western sanctions were tightening, but the immediate crisis wasn't political, it was logistical. Djibouti port was experiencing severe congestion. Ships were delayed by 2 weeks. Ethiopian flower exporters, whose roses must reach European auctions within 72 hours of cutting, were losing entire shipments to spoilage. $40 million worth of flowers rotted in containers. Coffee exporters faced a different problem, with Western buyers reducing purchases due to reputational concerns over Tigray conflict. Ethiopian coffee sat in Djibouti warehouses, but storage fees kept accruing. Port fees kept accruing. By the time alternative buyers in Asia could be found, margins had evaporated. Ethiopia's Minister of Trade stood before the cabinet and delivered a simple calculation. We lost more revenue to logistic bottlenecks last month than we lost to Western aid cuts. That was the moment, not when Abiy decided to defy the West, but when Ethiopian officials realized that Western market access wasn't the advantage they'd been told it was. It was a toll booth extracting rent from products Western consumers desperately wanted. They began mapping alternative routes. Berbera wasn't plan A. They approached Eritrea. Negotiations collapsed. They explored expanding Kenya-Lamu ports. Kenyan officials demanded prohibitive fees. They studied Somalia's Mogadishu port. Too dangerous, too unreliable. Somaliland was the only option that offered proximity, that is closer to Addis Ababa than Djibouti, underutilized capacity, and a government desperate enough for recognition that it will offer preferential terms. By late 2022, the outlines of a deal were clear. What took another year wasn't negotiating with Somaliland, it was building the alternative supply chains, finding Chinese shipping lines willing to route through Berbera, convincing Gulf Arab coffee importers to shift from European suppliers, negotiating with Dubai's flower market to compete with Amsterdam. When Abiy signed the MOU on January 1st, 2024, the infrastructure was already in place. The Western diplomatic community thought they were witnessing the start of a crisis. They were actually watching the announcement of a fait accompli. Here's what's absent from every analysis published in Western media. Ethiopian farmers were never opposed to selling to American or European buyers. They were opposed to accepting $1.50 per pound for coffee that sells for $25. If Western buyers had offered direct purchasing agreements, profit-sharing models, or investments in Ethiopian processing facilities that would let Ethiopia export roasted coffee instead of raw beans, Berbera would be irrelevant. But that would require dismantling the system that made commodities trading profitable. So, instead, Western policy offered what it always offers: capacity building workshops, sustainability certification, and financing programs, all designed to make Ethiopian farmers better at producing raw materials for Western supply chains, not at capturing more value themselves. The dominant narrative frames the Berbera deal as Ethiopia undermining Somali sovereignty. But look at it from an Ethiopian flower farmer's perspective. You grow roses that sell for €2 each in Amsterdam, you receive 15 euro cents. The other €1.85 is captured by exporters, shippers, and auction houses you've never met in cities you will never visit. Then someone offers you a route to Dubai where buyers will pay you 40 euro cents per rose, still less than the final retail price, but nearly triple what you were getting. You are told the new route violates international norms. You look at your children who need school fees. Which matters more? So, what does this cost the United States? Not government revenue. Coffee tariffs are minimal, but American companies are losing billions in captured value. Coffee roasters who built brands on single origin Ethiopian beans now face competition from Chinese and Gulf roasters buying the same beans at lower cost. Commodities traders who profited from arbitrage, buying cheap in Africa, selling expensive in the West, now face suppliers who can route around them. Logistic companies that controlled East African shipping lines now watch Chinese carriers capture market share. Financial services firms that provided trade financing denominated in dollars now see transactions settling in yuan and dirhams. This isn't about tariffs or trade agreements, it's about the invisible infrastructure of market control. The system that ensured African raw materials flowed through Western middlemen before reaching end consumers. The Berbera deal isn't just about Ethiopia. It's a proof that the entire model of agricultural trade, African production, Western processing, Western distribution can be disrupted by a single alternative port and willing buyers. And once that precedent is set, why would any African country keep accepting $1.50 for a product worth $25? So in January 1st, 2024, in Addis Ababa, Ethiopian Prime Minister signs a deal to access a port. The world calls it aggression, recklessness, a violation of norms, but with full context restored, it looks like something else, a revolution in agricultural trade, disguised as a diplomatic crisis. Abiy Ahmed didn't bypass American coffee market because he's anti-Western. He bypassed them because Ethiopian farmers showed him the receipts. $1.50 received for a product sold at $25 and asked why their government was protecting a system that extracted their wealth. The United States didn't lose Ethiopia coffee to Chinese influence or Gulf money. America lost it the moment Ethiopian farmers, with calculators, realized they could route around the middlemen and discovered that American consumers will still pay $25 for their coffee, just with different people capturing the other $23.50. The cost isn't measured in value of one trade route. It's measured in every other African farmer watching and asking why they are still shipping through Western supply chains at all. This is Project Rise Africa. Feeling inspired? Subscribe for more. I'll see you again.